Welcome to the Macdownunder Podcast for all Australian Apple computer enthusiasts and collectors.
Welcome to this episode of the Macdownunder Podcast. For reasons that will become clear as we go along, this episode is going to be called not the 13th episode. You'll hear more about why later. But I'm Justin, I'm here with Matthew, and today I'm really lucky because Matt's let me come down to the museum to record this episode, and it's brilliant to be here. I was meant to be here helping Matt set up for the open day on Saturday, but he's actually done all the work already. So anyway, it's great to be here, and from the little bit that I've seen, everyone that comes down is in for a treat. So if you've got time on Saturday, come down and have a look, but I'll let Matt talk more about that later on in the episode. So Matt, you've been busy getting set up. What else have you been up to?
Yeah, g'day JD. So nice to be sitting right next to you for this episode of the podcast.
Unusual for this.
Yeah, no, it's delightful. So the last week for me has been focused on continuing to get the museum space here ready for the Saturday ahead, which has been, I have to say, I've had a lot of fun. So I've learnt a lot, as you always do, as you're going through and setting things up. I've had some challenges as we've gone along, but yeah, more so just a lot of fun setting things up and trying to get things as precisely period accurate as I can, focusing on a display of early macOS 10 history, so from the public beta through to 10.4. So that's been me, JD, for the last week.
And the little that I've seen so far, just in sort of setting up today, those that come down are in for a treat. So if you've got a chance to get down here, we'll talk about it again later in the show. But I think it will be fantastic to be here whilst this part of the exhibition's on.
Thanks, JD. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been focusing on my keyboard collection, moving on from the mice from a couple of weeks ago. And so I've got a keyboard page now on the website, which has got most of those keyboards, and take a look and we can talk about it again in another episode. But one of the reasons for calling this not the 13th episode is I've experienced life. So in Marketplace, I've had some downs in the last weekend or so, in the last few days. So not the 13th is definitely the way to go. People that have sold stuff from under me when they've agreed to, travelling half across the state to pick something up to find out they'd already sold it to somebody else without telling me. There has been some bright sides, finally. The clouds have parted and I actually managed to pick up a keyboard just locally this morning, in fact, which was brilliant. And so it hasn't been fantastic. Oh, and yes, and the other thing, as recently as last night, my Time Machine backup hard drive failed. So I'm flying blind at the moment, no backups of everything. So I need to rush off and buy another hard drive and get those backups started.
Yes.
So not the 13th, absolutely.
Yeah,
today.
Gosh. I'm sorry to hear about the trials and tribulations you've had of Facebook Marketplace buying. So,
well, I think everybody experiences it. I've been on a good run, I think, for a long time, which is great. But there are some dodgy traders, so you do need to be careful. Use PayPal, make sure you communicate well, all those sorts of things.
Yes.
Which I thought I was doing, but there you go.
Yeah, gosh, and do get that backup hard drive sorted.
That's, absolutely. I've copied everything I can for the moment, but I need a big capacity drive to back everything up off my day drive. Right, so on to today's episode. Now, we've covered quite a few topics, and today we're going to go right back close to Apple's beginning to talk about this particular book here. Now, this is the Apple In-Depth guide to Apple products from 1980. In fact, the fall-winter edition of Apple In-Depth. I actually got this back in 1980 when our family bought our first Apple II computer. And so I would have been a teenager, I would have been 15 or 16. And so this book is well thumbed. I've been through it over and over, drooling over all the 1980s products and wishing I could buy all of them. But of course, in the day, they were extremely expensive, even though today you can pick them up a little bit cheaper. Although, as you'll see in our for sale section later, they're going up in price a bit too.
Yeah, great.
So from what I can tell, Apple were trying to release this particular guide, Apple In-Depth, every 6 months. And so far I've been able to find 4. I've got one and I've bought a second. We'll talk about why as we go through. But I can identify at least 4 editions that they gave out. There's also Apple in a Glance, which we'll talk about another day if we want to, which is the short form sort of brochure. It's only a couple of pages. But the Apple in-depth guide runs to 101 pages. So it's really in-depth, which we'll get to, at the princely sum of $3.
Yeah, not bad. $3 in $1980, which would be what, about $6 today, maybe $10 today.
I suspect it was American too.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure that we even paid for it. I think it was a giveaway from Computerland or wherever we bought our computer back then.
My inbuilt inflation calculator might need some calibration there, but yeah, it seems like a pretty reasonable price for something which is so comprehensive.
Mind you, I bought the next version. Again, we'll talk about why in a moment, and it cost a lot more than $3.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. And we've got one, in fact, we've got a copy of this in the for sale section. So if you're interested in this, you do have to import it from the US, but we'll talk about it later on. So you've been through this with me previously. What were your initial thoughts of the book?
I have to say, JD, one of the things that stood out was that there's so much stuff in there, and this is a company that was 3-4 years old, and the amount of stuff that we know Apple, their place in the personal computer space accelerated really quickly with the Apple II. But just seeing, how much stuff they've developed in just a short period of time that they've been around at this point in time really stood out. I love looking at the photography in there and having the opportunity to see everything as it would have been back in the day. And and our viewers will know by now that that's part of the initiative I've got here at the museum, is to get things set up like it would have been back in the day. And,
well, to that end, there's a photo on the front cover. So we'll have to emulate this.
Yes.
So the photographer and whoever the set designer was in 1980, presumably, decided that the Apple III was best used by having the printer on top of the computer and looking at the printout and having the screen in the corner as if it didn't matter.
I wonder if it's to emulate a typewriter. So just to connect back to people that might have been familiar with using a typewriter, because it does come across typewriter-like, I think, the way they've got that set up.
It does, and I think it probably speaks to the 1980s and that very few people would have had exposure to a personal computer and actually know how to set them up if they didn't have one already.
Yeah, yep. So maybe a deliberate attempt to some familiarity with people that might have been, on typewriters back then and wanting to market to them and to get their attention. Fascinating stuff.
And so that's alongside a simple photo of an Apple II Plus, which I think is well taken.
Yep.
And obviously some photos in there of manuals and software, which pretty much covers what the whole book's about.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, so we'll move on to just the inside. So the first inside page is titled The Seeds of Success. So they were really running with the Apple theme, Apple Seeds for Success. And reading through it, talks about acclaim by innovation, which sounds like a mission statement to me. Service and support, documentation, and the future of Apple. It really reads to me like a mini prospectus. What did you think? Have you had a read of that bit?
I actually didn't read this as thoroughly as you probably did, about 3 or 4 dozen times
in 1980.
Yes, but just love the obviously the Apple fruit references, with the seeds of success. That's really cool. But again, such early days for a lot of this personal computing. So I guess giving people a bit more of an understanding about what journey Apple is on would have been important back then.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it is a big book compared to their brochures. So moving on to the table of contents, because we're not going to run through the whole 103 pages. We'd be here for another hour and a half.
Yeah. Yes.
But moving on to the table of contents, the first section probably sets the scene. So Apple personal computer systems, and it talks about the Apple II and the II Plus. So they were both for sale at the same time, which is interesting to remember. And the newly released Apple III. So clearly that's the focus of the hardware. In fact, they're the only computers they had, so that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
But interestingly, they've promoted the Apple III word processor and the Apple III information analyst. Now, I needed to look up what the information analyst was. So it was actually a bundle.
Okay.
So it was possibly the first bundle that they advertised, and it was the Apple Business Basic for the Apple III, plus a licensed copy of VisiCalc 3, the spreadsheet.
Right. Okay.
So it's interesting that they're the two things that they were really pushing. So it was really this business focus for the Apple III, wasn't it?
Is this the very early origins of iWork?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was, or AppleWorks.
AppleWorks,
which was there as well.
Very cool.
So moving on, it goes on to software, and there's a whole range of software. Now, to me, some of the interesting things here is some of the software that they're talking about actually isn't released, and they talk about it being available in some other following year at the end of this 6-month period for this particular book, which is interesting. And as you'd probably expect when the Apple III was new, a lot of the software is Apple II focused.
Yes.
And there's only really VisiCalc, which is actually licensed to Apple for this, a mail list manager. Now, we're not talking email here. So this is your snail mail label printing mail manager. And Word Painter, which must have been their title for the Apple III word processor. But everything else is for the Apple II, which, again, the Apple II had been around for a few years at this point.
The target, the table that we've got here where they're indicating the target market or the target audience for each of these pieces is really cool too. I like that.
It's fascinating. So yeah, just in case it isn't on screen at the moment. So green P is for professional, yellow B is for small business, red E is for education, and of course that's a big theme for Apple even now. Then we've got scientific or industrial is the purple, interesting choice. They're using the colours of the Apple rainbow, of course. And the light blue is for home or hobby. And I notice a lot of them are home or hobby.
And the Apple II suits everything. So you could do everything with an Apple II, from business or professional, I should say, through to home and hobby, of course. So yes.
And of course, we know they were pushing business and professional, and certainly there's a lot of yellow stripes alongside a lot of the software as well.
Very cool.
So the next section then talks about languages and utilities, which of course now we probably don't care too much about, but back then actually I did end up programming a lot of your own stuff, and a lot of the hobbyists absolutely did that. In fact, they'd build their own interfaces as well, because you could do that back then. And so the key languages they've got is Pascal, which had been around for a little while for the Apple II, Apple Pilot, and I did read up what it means and I can't remember, but it's an educational language.
Right.
Focused very much on use in educational markets and teaching environments. Someone will check in the comments for what it actually means, and if I remember, I'll even put it on the screen. Apple Fortran, which old school programmers know about because it still exists today, because a lot of the mainframes and mini computers had Fortran programs that were never translated and are still operating even now.
Wow.
So no surprise that Apple was getting into that market. One of my favourites, AppleSoft. I did a lot on AppleSoft and Integer Basic. So they're products in this catalogue, which is fascinating. The DOS Toolkit for the 5.25 inch floppy drive. And then for the Apple III, Apple Business Basic and Apple Pascal 3 as well. Now it's fascinating. These were all paid for add-ons for your Apple II or your Apple III. Whereas now, of course, we're used to just getting the operating system and all the updates for free, which is fantastic.
Right. Exactly.
Did you have a favourite programming language at all?
No, I completely skipped, unfortunately, the joys of
Applesoft.
But again, on my very long list of things I'd love to do, learning something like Basic would be cool. And there's a few things recently I've come across, a few videos which have given me some insight into that. Really cool stuff. But no, I unfortunately skipped that. As I've mentioned, most of the Apple II series, which has been a joy to sort of discover and learn for me at the moment.
Well, I certainly loved AppleSoft. I still do. Well, not that I programmed in it for a while. And then I graduated to Pascal at one point. We had to pay for that, and we needed the 16K expansion RAM card to be able to do that. I wrote a couple of programs for that back when I was still at school, in fact. So they're dear to my heart.
Yep.
I hope when I get my Apple II up and running that the discs have still survived. I don't know. All right, the next section in the in-depth guide is operating systems. So even these were extra products. So you bought your computer and then you needed to buy the operating system. And so brand new in the day was DOS, disk operating system, DOS 3.3 for the Apple II and the Apple II Plus, because they had been running a 13 sector. It was a big update. So DOS 3.2 was 13 sector. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, don't I? But
very much so, yeah.
It was a different format in the on the medium, and it wasn't compatible with DOS 3.3. So this was a huge upgrade. It was like going from HFS to HFS Plus, or the underpinning format of the hard drives, or in this case floppy disks. So it was a big deal, and you had to pay for an upgrade. You needed to swap chips, and you needed to upgrade all your floppy drives, or your floppy disks as well to be compatible.
Right, okay.
So that was a big deal. So that's in here. And then SOS, the sophisticated operating system for the Apple III, which we now know ended up turning into ProDOS for the Apple II.
Yes.
When they moved on. So there's quite a difference here, and anyone that tuned into the Australian Computer Museum Society's talk about Apple IIIs will have heard about this. That the disk operating system for the Apple II was just about disks and files, whereas the SOS for the Apple III controlled the whole computer. And we're a bit more familiar with that now with the Mac, that it controls the screen, it controlled the printer, it controlled the mouse, the keyboard, everything. It wasn't just about the disk drive. So SOS was, it was a big deal in its day. But again, not many people know about it. Most people know about ProDOS if they've got an Apple II.
Yep.
Moving on, accessories. So fascinating, isn't it, to read through the list?
Yeah.
So you could buy your Disk 2, your floppy disk drive for your Apple II. So it was an add-on, which you had to pay for extra. I remember I wanted Mum and Dad to buy 2 disk drives, but we could only afford 1. It was a big deal. The graphics tablet, a very early touchpad. Well, in fact, it was a pen pad. And in fact, just shout out to my website. I've just uploaded some high-res photos of my graphics tablet. I cleaned it up yesterday, and and it looks great in the photos. Don't know if it works yet. I have to try it out again. So it was a big deal. And at our school, the teachers' room had a graphics tablet on their Apple II, and I was allowed to use it out of hours. So that was a big deal for me because I loved it. I think it took like 30 years before I bought my own.
Right. Yep.
What else have we got? We got the silent type thermal printer. I think we've got a silent type in the museum. If not,
there is one here. Yes.
Yep. So it was Apple's first branded printer, although they actually rebadged it. It was somebody else's that they bought. The daisy wheel printer. So if you're not familiar with it, this was, instead of the golf ball or the typewriter sort of with keys, this was a disc that spun around and it would choose the letter and then it'd impact that leaf of the disc. And that way you could change the type. So with your typewriter, you can't change the font, but with the daisy wheel, you change the daisy to a different font. So you could have a sans serif or a Times New Roman, etc. But again, this was in fact the Cume Sprint 5, and they say so in the index. So it literally was somebody else's printer that they were advertising.
Yes.
Because they were really going for business and they wanted a letter quality printer, and that certainly was. And this is something interesting. We'll probably talk about it again in a moment. The Disk 2, so again, the floppy disk for Apple III. Now, yes, a lot of people will know Apple III had floppy disks. What you may not have known is that the Disk 3, which we're used to, wasn't ready in 1980. And so they sold the Apple II disk drive with different circuitry to run for the Apple III, because there's a different pinout. I think in our cables thing we might have mentioned
I think
it.
it was mentioned, yes.
If not, it's certainly on the cables website. Have a look. So the Disc 2 has an IDC 20, whereas the Apple III Disc port is a 26-pin IDC. So they're completely different.
Right, yep.
So anyway, in this 1980 catalogue, we see the Disc 2 in the accessories, and we'll see the happy shots in a moment. The Apple Monitor 3. Now, what do you expect that looks like?
Well, I've got a Apple 3 monitor here in the museum, but I think you're going to tell me it doesn't look like what we're expecting it to look like.
No. well picked. So in this particular catalogue, and it was fascinating to get it out again just recently when I showed you, they actually marketed the Apple III monitor, but it was the Sanyo 12-inch black and white screen. So we're used to the little 9-inch one for the Apple II that had been around for a long time.
Yes.
And they were advertising the 12-inch one as the Apple Monitor 3 because, again, the one you're referring to, the Hitachi screen with the plastic surrounds, wasn't ready yet.
Yeah, wow.
Fascinating. So this is really early in those Apple business days. They hadn't quite finished the product range. And then there's the Apple joystick. And interestingly, it says it's for the Apple II and II Plus. In fact, the one that's compatible with the Apple III doesn't work in the Apple II or II Plus because it hasn't got the right port, which is interesting. But it wasn't ready. So when you go to that page, it actually says to be launched in summer. Again, a rebadged product. It was actually made by the keyboard company.
Right.
Because I've got one of theirs from the Apple II days. I bought it back then. And basically Apple licensed it and manufactured it, or got them to manufacture it as the Apple joystick. So fantastic accessories. So yeah, we're probably used to printers. Even now, people still use printers. I still use a printer, even though everything's in the cloud and we're trying to be paperless. But things like floppy disks don't matter anymore.
No.
These days. And graphics tablets, well, you know, we can use our touchpads and our iPads and
we can use our iPhone as a joystick, so, you know, without the physical side of things anyway, but a game controller, I should say. But interesting.
Back in the day, though, they were a big business and I wanted them all.
Yeah.
As a 15-year-old me. All right, moving on. Interface cards. Probably not, well, maybe it is surprising. So they've got the serial interface. That would have been for a serial type of printer or for a modem to do communications. A communications interface card, which was more targeted for parallel communications, I'm pretty sure. Then they've got the parallel printer / Centronics interface. That's absolutely a printer card, and it's a bit of a standard, or what became a standard, the Centronics interface. They talk about the Apple IEEE 488 interface card. Now, I've got one of these, but I don't have the thing it connects to, which is a mainframe.
Right.
So again, Apple really going in for business in 1980, saying you can use your Apple II for $2,000 to connect to your $1 million mainframe. And then the universal parallel interface card. Now, we've highlighted this in the museum just recently.
That's right. I was going to say, interesting to see the IEEE 488 card specifically for scientific or industrial. Yes, so
absolutely makes
it's
sense.
Only applicable market apparently, according to this.
Yeah, mine looks terribly unloved. I don't think it saw any heavy duty.
Right.
It's very clean. But I guess today, the collectors will know this, but for those getting into the hobby, you know, we buy a Mac these days, it's got all the serial ports we need.
Yep.
We don't need to buy an add-on card.
Well, we have to buy dongles, so
True.
as we've learnt, but yes.
True, but you know, in terms of the computer, it has what it needs to communicate with things, whereas the Apple II and III, well, actually the Apple III had built-in ports too, but the Apple II needed them all to be added.
More. Yep.
Because it didn't have much expansion, although it had options, but you had to buy them. Speaking of options, the next part of the in-depth into Apple is expansion options. And so here we're talking about, again, their interface cards largely. So the language system, which was a 16 kilobit RAM card that expanded your Apple II from a maximum of 48K to 64K. And we're used to that with the Apple IIes and others because it was a pretty standard, but the Apple II was the same. and you needed that extra RAM so you could run the extra languages like Pilot or Pascal or Fortran. If you didn't have it, you didn't have enough RAM, and boy, do I know that.
Yeah.
I ran out of RAM, I should say, so many times programming, particularly in Pascal, but even in AppleSoft, I had to keep on upping the RAM in the computer for the programs I was writing. The AppleSoft firmware card or the Integer basic firmware card, same card, different ROMs.
Okay.
So if you bought your Apple II, which came with Integer, you'd buy the AppleSoft firmware card and then you had AppleSoft available to you. Or if you bought your Apple II Plus, but you wanted to run Integer, you could buy the Integer card.
Ah, okay.
The better way was to buy your language card and just load Integer into the language. You could do that too, which is what I used to do. But isn't it interesting, if you wanted to change how your firmware operated, you bought an interface card and inserted it.
Fascinating.
No software upgrade or hardware upgrade. And then we've got the ultimate ones. So we've got the Auto Start ROM, and a bit further down, we've got the Programmer's Aid. Now they're both ROM chips. So you pull the ROM chip out of your motherboard and plug this one in. Well, in fact, the Auto Start goes into a blank space most of the time.
Right.
And the Programmer's Aid, I think, replaced one of the ROMs. I might be wrong there. But this is getting right down into the detail. This would be a service department call these days.
Right.
Changing a chip in your computer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But back then, that was something that everyone but the professionals were expected to do, according to the ticks in the boxes.
Wow.
What else have we got there? The hobby card, we sort of mentioned that a moment ago, so you could build your own interface cards. They supplied you a blank, that's what that was. And then other people's products. Interestingly, there's a typo. So it says the Monitor 2B, but when you get to the actual page, it's actually the Modem 2B. And the Modem 2B isn't actually a modem, it's an acoustic coupler.
Wow.
So, it's where the little suction pads where you put your handset, if people remember telephones with a handset, you put your handset into the acoustic coupler and your your acoustic coupler made the noises to go down the audio part of your phone. Well, there was no data part. Went down the audio lines on your phone and got the same back, which is why we used to all those noises in dial-up that people might remember. And I've been searching for one of these acoustic couplers, and it looks like a whole heap of people had the same model. Tandy had one. I've been eyeing that one off because it looks just like the Apple one.
Right, okay.
So again, I think it's been a rebadged product from someone else.
Yep.
The Printer 2A is actually a Centronics printer, a Centronics dot matrix printer in this case, which I've never seen for sale other than in the catalogue. But it is a Centronics printer, which Apple put a sticker on to make it an Apple printer. And even the clock calendar card. So your Apple II didn't have a clock, the Apple III did. But they're promoting Mountain Hardware's card.
Right,
So
okay.
to get an Apple clock card, you went and bought it from Mountain Hardware. And coincidentally, I happened to find one yesterday in my collection when I was raffling through.
There we go.
So I'll have to get it out and add it to my to the website for people to have a look at.
Yep.
So that's a rundown of what's in the book. But the family photo is, I guess, what I used to drool over.
Yes.
Look at all that hardware and the software and accessories and the joystick in the corner.
That's so cool.
Even though it wasn't available yet.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. Just takes me right back to my 1980 Apple II in the study at home.
I can relate to this in later Apple product catalogs, which were more Macintosh. Well, they were only Macintosh focused by then, in the mid 90s, and I can completely connect with what you're saying there, JD, about looking at this and drooling over it. And I've mentioned this one before, but looking in a catalogue and seeing the Apple the Apple adjustable keyboard.
Oh yes.
Yes, and made me just want one. And it was seeing it in the photo, and I've got one now in the museum, which is great. But yeah, these sorts of product shots, gosh, they stir up a lot inside you when you're looking at them. So they're great to see.
That finishes our in-depth view of Apple in depth. Matt, now that you've gone through it in a bit more detail, what are your impressions?
Oh gosh, I sort of have to come back to what I opened with, JD, and saying that we're looking at a catalogue from a company that was only 3 years old, 4 years old at this stage, and pioneering this personal computing space, and the just the quality of the stuff that they'd produced and the variety of accessories. It's just incredible to think about it in the context of reading this like you did back in 1980. So I think it's a really cool, a really cool piece just to have in your collection, but sensational to go back and actually reflect on it with the mindset of looking at it in 1980. So very cool.
Yeah, it certainly tugs at the heartstrings, I've got to say, as an Apple collector, to go back to the roots of my collection, really the very first thing that I got, before the computer even. So that's our look back at early Apple promotional material. We'll probably do more of this as we go through, probably looking at something a bit more recent too. But I certainly loved it back in the day, and as I mentioned, it's pulling at the heartstrings for me. I hope you've enjoyed it too, watching. So do you have a favourite piece of Apple marketing or documentation? What do you like about it? We'd love to know. So let us know down in the comments, and we might even be able to talk about it in a future episode. And as we always say, if you've got any thoughts about topics for us to discuss in future episodes, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So on to current news. Well, the big news, I guess, is the next Apple event is coming up for Australians on the 10th of September at 3 a.m. till 5 a.m. So set your alarm clocks. For Apple collecting, probably not a lot of news here, but there's lots of spoilers out there about all the iDevices and other things to expect. So yeah, if you're into those sorts of things, set your alarm clock. Otherwise, you can probably watch it online afterwards as well. Is you normally tuned into Apple events, Matt?
I don't tune into them, no, but I've got a quick little anecdote that I attended a stream when it was done only direct to Apple offices back when the iMac G4 was launched.
All right.
So I was, at the Apple office in Melbourne, which was on St Kilda Road, and it was great to be there, except the stream didn't work. So we had someone on the phone just relaying all of the announcements as they were coming out. So I love an Apple event. I don't get up for them these days, but I've got a nice little memory of attending the iMac G4 launch event.
Very nice.
Via stream.
Okay, so, I guess the Apple event is a coming event, even though I've put it in news. But other coming events that are closer to home is the WasFest is coming up in New South Wales on the 27th of September. Again, this is being held in a private house, so just check with the organisers to make sure you've got all the right details. The technology markets have got two events coming up. Their next one is, in fact, this Sunday, the 7th of September at Reservoir. But more importantly, on Sunday, the 14th of September at Keysborough Leisure Centre, there's a vintage computer collection show as well. And Matt and I have been talking. We'll see if we can get there. So stay tuned and we'll let you know next week. So also coming up this weekend on the 6th of September from 1 o'clock is the Retro Gaming Bendigo event. Same time as the Mac Museum, but if you can't get to Melbourne and you can get to Bendigo, check this one out. They are inviting people to bring along your own console, handheld computer or collection to discuss. So all you Apple gamers, if you want to get along to Bendigo, this Saturday, the 6th of September. And the big one, the Mac Museum Open Day, this Saturday from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. here in the Mac Museum. I can actually say that today. Matt, there's lots of interesting things in store.
Yes.
What tidbits can you let us know about?
Yeah, so look, we touched on it a little bit earlier, JD, that I've put some time and effort into preparing a early history of Mac OS X exhibit. So not to repeat what I said earlier, but that's here on display where you can get hands-on. There's a couple of other little bits and pieces that have been fine-tuned in the museum, a couple of new exhibits to play with, a beautiful collection of the iBook G3 clamshell range, which you can come and have a look at. And what is also, I'm really excited to say, is that we'll have our friend of the museum and friend of the podcast, Danny. He's coming down and he'll be doing some repair work live in the museum. So come and check it out. I'm excited for this Saturday, as I always am. And JD, great that you'll be coming along.
I'm looking forward to it. Not only to see Danny in the repair section, because I think he's repairing something that I need to repair, so it'll be great to watch. But the exhibit I've seen so far, and I haven't even really got to play with it yet, just looks fantastic. So can't wait for it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. Look forward to catching any of our viewers down there, if you can if you can make it, would be great.
So on to this week's for sale section, and again I did a sweep for Apple retro stuff less than $100, and this time a theme. I tried to focus on things connected directly to the Apple in-depth, well maybe not directly, associated, similar to the Apple in-depth catalogue that we've just been discussing. The first item we've got up is an Apple II disc interface card. If you have a look, copyright on the board is 1978, so it's actually older than the in-depth guide and probably would have still been in inventory and available for sale. So $90 from Victoria, buy it now. The next item sort of goes hand in hand with the previous one. So this one is the Apple II, the DOS manual, so the disk operating system manual that describes how to use your Disk 2 with an Apple II. This one's from New South Wales and is currently buy it now at $37.60.
It seems pretty reasonably priced, I would have thought as well, JD, for some of this older Apple
it's getting rarer
material. Yeah. Yep.
Next up, and I've seen a couple of copies of parts of this around the museum today in not tidying up, but just having a look. The Inside Macintosh. Now this one's volume 6 by Apple Computer from 1991. So this one focuses on System 7 from New South Wales, currently at $50. And the reason I've included it, it's another significant Apple publication that describes all the computers of the era and the System 7 implementation. Yes. So I know it's a tenuous link, but I'm going to claim it.
I'll pay it. No, that's good.
Next up, we've got VisiCalc for the Apple II. Now, we actually mentioned VisiCalc for the Apple III, so there's the link.
Yep.
So Apple licensed VisiCalc 3, but this is VisiCalc 2. And with its binder, the software appears to be there as well. So this one is from Queensland and is currently buy it now for $49.95.
Cool.
Next up, we've got the Apple Pilot Editor's Manual. So we talked about Apple Pilot earlier. It's an educational language for the Apple II. I think this might be a slightly newer version of it, but nevertheless, it's there. This one's from Victoria, currently buy it now at $29. So if you want to learn about Pilot, this is the book.
There we go.
Next one is the Apple Family Hardware Reference hardcover. Again, the link is, it's a list of all the hardware available. And from what I can find out, this ranges from the Mac 128K through to the Mac 2, including the Mac SE. So fairly big suite of Apple products in this hardware reference guide. So it is a reference guide. There's the link back to the in-depth guide.
Yep.
Currently $20 on auction from WA.
Also very reasonably priced, I would think.
Well, it's on auction. So
yeah, at the moment, 0 bids.
Jump in quick.
Yep. Oh, wow.
And lastly, now it's a bit of a ring in because this one's from the US, but very topical for today's discussion.
Yes.
So if you want to buy a copy of the guide that we were talking about today, there are in fact a couple of copies online. This was the cheapest one that I found, so I thought it'd be the one I'd highlight. So currently, so Apple In-Depth Reference Guide, Fall Winter 1980. I think it's the second one that they published. I've seen a first edition of the one prior that's going for silly money. So currently, buy it now, and if you're buying it right now, it's $50.35. The exchange rate will change.
Yep.
Whilst that sounds cheap, unfortunately, the shipping is close to $40 as well. So just remember, if you do want a copy, you're going to have to ship it to Australia.
Yes.
But even so, it still comes in at under $100, and again, very topical because it is the book we were talking about today.
There we go. Very good, and it meets the $100 criteria there, JD. So
it does.
Yeah, very good. I like it.
Well, that's the end of our not the 13th episode. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our retrospective review of 1980s Apple hardware, and in particular, a look at this particular Apple in-depth guide. We'd appreciate any comments on, what you thought about the episode, what you thought about the guide. Again, if you've got an Apple product catalogue that you're particularly drawn to, let us know. and also if there's any future topics you'd like us to talk about. Well, Matt, any final thoughts about Apple product guides before we finish up?
I love them. I've got a couple of them. I don't have them going back that far, mostly just Macintosh era ones, which maybe we could cover in a later episode.
I'm sure people would want to hear about more recent things.
Yeah. So I think the product guides are great. As I said, shows us what was available, shows us what was in that period, and if you wanted to replicate a setup from the day, great source material to be able to do that with. So yeah, I think they're great, and thanks for bringing it in, JD. It's great to see.
No worries, and thanks again for hosting us here in the Mac Museum.
Pleasure.
Again, come down, check out this exhibit. It looks fantastic. I'm going to have to have a play with it now.
Yeah.
We will be back again next week, so make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully I'll get to see you in person here in the museum on Saturday. But until we see each other, take care.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining the Macdownunder Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.